How did you end up getting that gig with Bill Wyman?
I've got to remember now. Yeah, his kind of right hand man, this guy called Terry Taylor, who played guitar with him. And Terry contacted me and he said Bill would like to. He's putting these. He's doing these recordings. He doesn't know what to do with them. He said I'm trying to get Bill back into playing again. He left the Stones a year ago, 10 years ago, and I want to get him back into playing. And we've been playing some things, and he wants some jazzy things. And he said I want some kind of more jazzy guitar. And Terry suggested me. So I went along one afternoon just to play some solos on some tracks that had already been recorded. Charlie Watts had been in and already played on that. I think Chris Rea had done some things. So I just kind of went in the studio with Bill, sat next together, and he's like me. He's we both drink a lot of tea. It's a British thing. So he would make the tea, and I would just sit there and play along to this track. So I played along to these two tracks that he wanted me to play, and then it was all done very quickly. And he said, "Oh, try this one," and then played another track. So I ended up playing a few, and he said, "Could you come back and do some more?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So I went back and did some more tracks, and then he actually did a couple of gigs with the band. And Peter Frampton was in it, and then Peter Frampton couldn't do it, do these other dates, and I was actually at a party with Bill, and he said, "Yeah, Peter can't make it," and he was talking. I'm waiting for him to say, "Can you do it?" And he didn't say anything, and I said, "Well, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind doing it. What was it? It was like 5 gigs or something." He said, "Oh, he said I didn't like to ask you." I said, I didn't think you'd want. I didn't think you'd want to do it." So that's another thing. Don't push yourself forward a bit sometimes. I said, I'd love to do it. I said it'd be fun, it'd be really nice. And Georgie Fame was on it, and Gary Brooker, from Whiter Shade of Pale, and it was a great band, really fantastic band. And yeah, so I went and did those dates, and then I did a few other tours, and it went on for a few years, doing that. But then I was still doing all my other things, and like all these things, as nice as they are, there comes a point where I just want to get back to what I do. It was a nice little side trip, that I did, and I still keep in touch with Bill and send him a birthday. Our birthdays are very close to each other, although 20 years apart. But he, I always contact him on his birthday and pop in and see him whenever I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. I went and watched a few videos. I couldn't actually find any with you might have been in the background. But I could not find any videos of you playing with them. But there's a lot of great videos of Albert Lee playing with them, and Albert Lee is smoking on those shows.
Oh, Albert's fantastic. The thing was, we were kind of a pool of the band wasn't like a set bunch of musicians. We were kind of a pool of musicians, so you didn't always have to do the gig. It's like it was floating. So whoever was about, Andy Fairweather Low might come in or something, and so it was kind of a floating thing. So yeah, some of them I'm not on. I'm on most of the records, and there are a number of videos about us as well. Yeah, but it was nice to do. I think something, as things get quite compartmentalized in music, different genres. I think kind of cast our minds back. I can remember it, but I was very very young. But in the UK in the 60s, especially around London, I actually my family lived in the London area when I was a kid, so I spent my earliest time there. And all of those groups, um, you had the folk scene, you had the blues scene, the jazz scene, which was kind of split between kind of traditional jazz and modern jazz, as they were like bebop jazz. Then you had rock bands, but the thing was, they all merged. There wasn't a big division between them. I mean, the Who started out as a jazz band. It's a traditional jazz band. All of the drummers in these bands, like Charlie Watts, all of them were jazz drummers because they all went to drummers for their jazz drummers for their lessons. Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix, of course, he was um, his drum teacher was Jim Marshall, who most people know as Jim Marshall from Marshall Amplifiers, of course, but he was a jazz drummer. And Mitch got a job, a Saturday job, working in his music store and taking drum lessons from him. And a few years, as he got a number of years later, Mitch went into the shop one day and he says, "Oh, this is an amazing American guitar player here that I'm working with called Jimi Hendrix, and we got this gig, and we just want, we need to get some big amps. We haven't got amplifiers big enough." And so Jim Jim invented the stack. That's how it happened. There were all these, but there was such an intermingling between all of these musical scenes. It wasn't cut and dried, and it wasn't. I guess it was a little bit tribal, but not. You know, Jazz players did go and play in blues players, and in fact, the first drummer with the Rolling Stones was a guy called Laurie Chesko, who I, in fact, used to do gigs with my father, and he was really a jazz drummer, and I think he gave Charlie some lessons, and then he couldn't do the gig and put Charlie in as a kind of a sub. Uh, so there was
I
this
bet he
kind of,
regrets that now.
yeah, there was this floating music scene going on where everybody mixed with each other.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and it really, that period of music is so fertile. Like, it just there was just so much going on, and you had, um, these musicians who would connect on that such deep level because they were from such different worlds, and I 100% agree with that, and I think that's why musicians should stretch out and they should play with other people that maybe they don't think they would normally play with. It just
Yeah,
it's really
I,
fascinating.
I was probably born about 10 years too late for that. But my brother, who's 6 years older than me, he did take me to see Jimi Hendrix when I was 13. So I did see Jimi Hendrix play at the Royal Albert Hall in London. Uh, so and I, he was playing these. My brother was playing. My brother didn't like jazz very much, and he put these records on of Jimi Hendrix. He said, "I bet you won't like this." And he put it on. And I said, "God, that's amazing." He said, "Right, we'll go and see him. He's playing at the Royal Albert Hall." And we went along to it. And of course, I'd never seen or heard anything like that in my life, and I was completely mesmerized by what was going on. But the funny thing is, to me, Jimi Hendrix, Mitch Mitchell, and Noel Redding, to me, that was a jazz trio. That's what I heard. It was, but other stuff going on, but I just heard a jazz trio happening. It's like Oscar Peterson with but loud and wild stuff going on. But it's the same kind of. They had this fantastic interplay that was going on uh, between them. It was absolutely wonderful.
Do you have any memories from that gig, the Hendrix gig?
Yeah, I remember him setting fire to his guitar, and I remember him. And I remember him. I remember him throwing. I can. Yeah, I can remember sort of bits and pieces of amps and things get throwing up at one point, and people going nuts. And also, I remember looking at the amps up there, like this kind of wall of amplifiers, which was it was very small, really. There wasn't a lot, and they didn't play through a PA system like a house system. I think, oh, this is really loud. It's really loud, but I mean, actually, it wasn't loud at all. It was loud, but not. You think the Albert Hall holds 5,000 people. When you think the Beatles played Shea Stadium with little AC30s, Vox 8030 amps, it's quite amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's insane, and then the, uh the sound engineering to, like, make that possible, like, they had to figure that out pretty much on the fly because they had never experienced anything quite like that, it was unbelievable.